I want you to think about the last time you landed on a new website. You know, just to read an article or check the weather or, I don't know, find a
Oh,
recipe.
yeah. We all know exactly where this is going.
Right. Instantly, the screen dims, and this massive pop-up appears, just filled with paragraphs of this tiny gray text.
Hmm.
And right at the bottom is this bright, glowing button that says, accept all cookies. Now, be honest. Did you read a single word of that text?
Nobody does.
Exactly. Or did you just click the glowing button because, well, the interface was specifically designed to be annoying and you just wanted the obstacle out of your way?
Yeah, you just want to get to the recipe.
Right. And if you're like almost everyone else, you clicked it. You traded a piece of your digital identity for, immediate convenience. But the question we're really exploring on today's deep dive is whether you actually don't care about your personal data being harvested, or if you're simply so overwhelmed by the sheer volume of these requests that you're just, frankly, exhausted.
Yeah, completely burnt out. And we're actually looking at a phenomenon today that goes way beyond just a minor daily annoyance.
Yeah.
We're diving into a really revealing stack of source material. It's the April 2026 Nationwide Privacy Concern Report.
Okay. And where is this coming from?
So this was conducted by AK Research and Consulting, and they prepared it specifically for the Office of the Privacy Commissioner in New Zealand.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a very comprehensive survey. They looked at 12,245 New Zealanders. And critically, it includes a specific Māori booster sample too.
Gotcha. Which is important, right? To get that full demographic picture.
Exactly. It ensures we get a statistically rigorous picture of how different communities are, actually experiencing digital and physical surveillance.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to basically unpack all this data, right? To understand this ultimate privacy paradox that's defining society right now.
That's the perfect way to phrase it, yeah. The privacy paradox.
Well, because we are simultaneously terrified of how our personal information is being used, we're desperate to regain control over it. And yet, the second we are asked to actually manage our privacy settings.
We just want to close our eyes and hope for the best.
Exactly. We just hit accept all and move on. So what does the report actually tell us about this?
Well, the data maps out this contradiction just perfectly.
Mm.
On one side of the paradox, the desire for privacy is, it's overwhelming. A massive 82% of New Zealanders state they actively want more control and choice over how their personal info is collected and used.
82%. That's huge.
It is. And for Māori respondents, that number climbs even higher, to 85%.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Protecting personal data remains a major life concern for basically 2/3 of the population. People are fully aware that their data is valuable, and they desperately want to protect it.
But then I assume we look at the actual behavior.
Right. The behavior tells a totally different story. Nearly half the country, so 49% of people, openly admit that it's simply, quote, too much effort to protect their data.
Wow. Half the country just feels like it's too hard.
Yeah, and that's actually a noticeable jump from the previous year.
It reminds me of the concept of cognitive load, like in an airplane cockpit.
Oh, right, yeah. Alarm fatigue.
Exactly. If a pilot is flying and 10 different warning alarms are blaring simultaneously, they don't sit there and address each one methodically. They experience alarm fatigue.
They just reach over and hit mute so they can actually think.
Right. And it seems like the public has reached the exact same point of alarm fatigue with their personal data. Or, it's like healthy eating. We all want to do it, but reading every single digital nutrition label is just so exhausting that eventually we give up and eat the digital junk food.
I love that analogy. And the term researchers actually use for this is privacy fatigue. And it's really important to note that it's a systemic issue. It is not a personal failing.
Because the system is built that way.
Precisely. We are constantly bombarded with these terms of service updates, privacy policy changes, complex opt-out menus.
Oh, the opt-out menus are the worst.
They're deliberately difficult to navigate. When it takes, 5 clicks to reject cookies, but only one single click to accept them, the system is engineered to exhaust you.
Right.
And the survey shows the psychological toll of that engineering. A slim majority, 51% of the population, cynically agree with the statement that none of our personal information is private anymore. We need to get used to it.
Okay, I really struggle with that 51% statistic.
How so?
Well, does that mean people are actually surrendering, or is it more of a coping mechanism? Because, if 82% still passionately want control, but half the country says, get used to it, that is an apathy.
No, none at all.
That's a feeling of total helplessness. You're forced to play this game where the rules are rigged against you from the start.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It is entirely a coping mechanism born from powerlessness. And we know this because overall concern about privacy is actively rising, not falling.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. 52% people say they are concerned, which is actually a steady recovery from a low point we saw back in 2022.
Interesting. So people haven't stopped caring. The threats have just become, I don't know, more complex, harder to see.
Exactly. And the report drills down into the specific societal triggers causing this rising anxiety. There are three distinct issues that really dominate the landscape here.
Okay, let's go through them. What's number one?
The highest of all is children's digital safety. 71% of respondents are highly concerned about the privacy of children, particularly when it comes to their use of social media.
I mean, that makes total sense. That feels like a generational anxiety that's just finally boiling over.
Oh, absolutely.
Because parents today are raising children in an environment they themselves didn't grow up in, right?
Right. The landscape is totally alien.
Yeah. So if an adult is experiencing privacy fatigue, just trying to manage their own digital footprint, the idea of trying to monitor what's some completely opaque social media algorithm is extracting from their, 12-year-old child, that must be terrifying.
It is. The adults feel defenseless themselves, which means they know their kids are entirely exposed. Wow. Okay, so that's the number one fear. What's number two? The anxiety surrounding algorithms directly feeds into the second biggest trigger, artificial intelligence.
Ah, of course. AI.
Yep. 67% of people are worried about government agencies or businesses using AI to make decisions about them based on their personal data.
67%.
And that concern about AI saw a massive 5% jump in just 1 year. People are finally realizing that their data isn't just sitting in a digital filing cabinet somewhere gathering dust.
Right, it's being used.
It is being actively fed into predictive models that determine what they see, what they can buy, and what services they can access.
I have to ask, is the fear of AI here about the technology itself, or is it just another manifestation of that powerlessness we were just talking about?
That's a really good question. How do you mean?
Well, think about applying for a mortgage. If a human loan officer looks at your file and denies you, you can sit across the desk from them, ask why, and actually argue your case. There's friction, sure, but there's humanity.
Right, there's a conversation.
Exactly. But if an invisible algorithm denies your loan, you can't see the math. You can't appeal to a server farm. It becomes this impenetrable black box dictating the trajectory of your life based on data you didn't even know it had.
Yeah, and the data in the report actually confirms your exact reading of the situation. The fear is entirely rooted in the lack of disclosure and the inability to appeal.
Really?
Yes, an overwhelming 86% of individuals surveyed say they must be told in advance if an organization is going to be using computer algorithms or AI to make decisions about them.
86%. They want a warning.
They're demanding that the black box be dragged out into the light. People don't inherently assume the AI is going to make a worse decision than a human. They just assume they will have absolutely no recourse if the machine makes a mistake.
Give me a warning before the machine judges me. I mean, I completely understand that demand. It's totally fair.
It really is.
Okay, so we have kid safety, we have AI. What is the third major anxiety driving this fatigue?
The third one is the management of personal data by social media companies, which sits at a 65% concern level.
Okay, so social media data.
Yeah. So when you combine the fear for children's safety, the dread of algorithmic decision-making, and the distrust of social media platforms, you just have this potent cocktail of digital anxiety.
Because they're all invisible threats, right?
Exactly. You cannot physically see an AI analyzing your purchasing habits. You can't see a social media company packaging your data for a broker. It all happens behind the scenes.
Well, let's shift from the invisible to the highly visible then. Because this report doesn't just isolate these fears to the digital realm, does it?
No, not at all. It explores what happens when these anxieties actually manifest in the physical world.
Right. We're talking about walking down the street, walking into a retail store, attending a public event.
Exactly. We are seeing a significant transition of privacy fears into physical spaces. And it's primarily driven by facial recognition technology.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The concern is rising across every single metric they tested in this category. People are suddenly waking up to the fact that the physical world is becoming as trackable as a web browser.
That's a creepy thought.
It really is.
Uh-huh.
Almost half the population is worried about retail stores using facial recognition to identify them, and a similar number are concerned about law enforcement using the technology in public spaces.
But a camera isn't just a neutral piece of glass anymore. The anxiety about a camera scanning a crowd isn't just about someone knowing you bought milk on a Tuesday.
No.
It's about how the system interprets your face,
Yeah.
right? The potential for it to get things wrong.
Exactly. And that is where the most acute fear lies. The report highlights that the majority of the public, 53%, are specifically worried about the potential biases of facial recognition.
The bias, yeah.
They're concerned that racial or gender biases embedded in the technology could lead to misidentification.
And I really want to dig into the Maori booster sample here, because this is where a nationwide average can kind of obscure a very stark reality on the ground.
Oh, absolutely. The demographic split on these physical surveillance issues is massive.
Because if a system is historically trained on certain demographics, its error rate on others has severe real-world consequences. A false positive in a retail store isn't just a glitch. It means being publicly accused of shoplifting.
Right.
A false positive for law enforcement means a false arrest.
And the data reveals a consistent double-digit gap in concern here. When it comes to retail use of facial recognition, concern among Māori respondents jumps significantly compared to the general population.
Wow.
The same gap exists regarding law enforcement use in public spaces. And regarding the specific fear of racial or gender bias leading to misidentification, concern is substantially higher within the Māori demographic.
I mean, this just proves that the impact of a privacy intrusion is heavily dependent on lived experience.
Exactly.
If you belong to a historically marginalized demographic, your fear of a facial recognition camera isn't some abstract philosophical debate about data rights. It is an immediate physical threat to your safety and your peace of mind. The stakes are simply higher.
The context changes the perception of the threat entirely. But, and this is really interesting, the survey reveals a secondary paradox here that severely complicates how we regulate this technology.
Wow, another paradox.
Yeah. Despite the widespread fear of facial recognition and the acute anxiety regarding bias, a strong majority of the public still supports surveillance when it's tied to specific tangible outcomes.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Over 60% of people support the use of surveillance technologies to reduce theft from businesses, and a similarly high number support it to improve personal safety in public spaces.
Okay, wait, I need to challenge that.
Go for it.
How can we have a society where 82% of people are terrified of losing their privacy, and the majority are deeply worried about racial bias and facial recognition, yet over 60% are asking for more cameras to stop business theft? Like, are people just massive hypocrites when they get scared of crime?
It's a fair question, but it's not hypocrisy. It's actually a demonstration of how highly transactional public opinion is regarding privacy.
Transactional.
Yeah, the public treats privacy as a currency. We are willing to spend our physical privacy to let the cameras watch us if we believe the return on investment is high enough.
Ah, I see.
So if the transaction offers a safer neighborhood or a local grocery store that doesn't have to lock up basic goods behind glass due to theft, people will make the trade.
I want you, the listener, to really think about where you personally draw that line. Because you might hate the idea of a camera logging your movements in a mall, but if you were told that camera drastically reduced the chance of your car being broken into in the parking lot, would your principles hold up?
It's a tough call.
It is. We are constantly weighing liberty against security. But for any transaction to work, right, whether it's financial or data-driven, there has to be trust between the two parties.
And trust is the foundational element here. And according to the 2026 report, that foundation has completely eroded.
Really?
Yeah. The demographic divide we just saw with facial recognition, that's just a symptom of a much deeper systemic trust deficit.
Let's hear the numbers.
When people are asked if they're confident that New Zealand law adequately protects their personal information, the baseline is shockingly low. Only 18% of people are extremely or very confident in the legal safety net.
Wait, 18%.
18%. And a full third of the country has absolutely no confidence at all.
Okay, if only 18% of a society believes the laws designed to protect them actually work. I mean, the fatigue we discussed earlier makes complete sense now.
It really does.
Why would you spend hours carefully reading terms of service and manually adjusting your privacy settings If you fundamentally believe that when a company inevitably breaches your data, the law won't do a single thing to help you. It's an entirely rational response to a broken system.
Exactly.
So what does the trust look like for the organizations that are actually holding the data?
Well, it's moderate at best. Government agencies score the highest for trust, but only at 31%.
That's the highest. Wow.
Yeah. New Zealand-based businesses sit slightly lower at 27%. And overseas-based businesses are at the absolute bottom, with only 11% of the population trusting them to handle personal information responsibly.
We really need to look at the Māori data gap again here, because a national average of 31% trust in government is already quite poor. But that number must look different when we segment the data, right?
The fracture in institutional trust is profound here.
Right.
Only 21% of Māori have high trust in government agencies. That is a full 10 points lower than the general population.
Right.
But the truly fascinating data point is how they view international tech companies.
Okay.
Māori actually have slightly higher trust in overseas-based businesses at 17% than the general public does.
Wait, really? Let's explore the mechanics of that, because that is a fascinating sociological insight.
It really is.
Trust in local government plummets for Māori, yet an anonymous multinational tech company operating servers on another continent actually garners slightly more trust than the national average.
Exactly.
It's like geographic distance feels safer than institutional proximity. And I think it comes down to the difference between opt-in relationships and mandatory relationships.
Tell me more about that.
Well, you can choose to delete your social media account, right?
Right.
You can choose not to buy a smart speaker from an international company. If you lose trust in an overseas business, you just sever the relationship. But you cannot simply walk away from your relationship with the government.
Oh, that's a really sharp observation.
Right. Interactions with government agencies, the health system, social services, the tax department, they're mandatory. You must hand over highly sensitive, intimate details of your life simply to participate in society.
And when trust in a mandatory system is only at 21%, the vulnerability is staggering.
The anxiety is always going to be infinitely higher when you cannot walk away from the table.
Absolutely. So when you combine all these factors, the mandatory data collection, the low systemic trust, the anxiety about AI black boxes, and just the sheer fatigue of managing cookie banners,
Yeah.
the public is at a breaking point. The status quo is entirely unsustainable right now. The report clearly shows a transition from the public just diagnosing their fatigue to actively demanding a cure.
Okay, so they want a cure.
You do. And the public is demanding regulatory teeth.
If people are too tired to manage their own digital defense, how do they want this resolved? Like, do they plan to just stop using certain services?
Some of them, yeah. They are ready to leverage their consumer power. 66% of New Zealanders state they would consider changing service providers if they heard about poor privacy and security practices.
Good.
They're actively looking for companies that don't treat their data as a commodity to be exploited. Furthermore, 64% actively want to learn more about what businesses and government agencies can legally do with their data.
But consumer choice isn't enough, is it? It's too much work.
Right. And that's why the public is overwhelmingly demanding that the law step in and do the heavy lifting for them.
We talked earlier about children's safety being the highest priority. Does that translate into support for specific legislation?
Absolutely it does.
Yeah.
88% of people support new laws specifically designed to protect children's privacy.
88%. That is near universal.
It's massive.
Yeah.
They also want new rights added to the existing Privacy Act. The highest support, at 86%, is for the right to request erasure.
Oh, the right to request erasure.
Yes. People want the legal power to point to an organization and say, if you no longer have a legitimate reason to hold my data, you must delete it. It is the demand for the right to be forgotten.
I mean, I completely understand wanting the right to erasure, but, a right is just a suggestion unless there is an actual mechanism to enforce it.
Very true.
Because the current feeling is that companies suffer data breaches, they apologize, maybe they offer you a year of credit monitoring if you're lucky, and then they go right back to business as usual. Does the public want actual consequences?
The demand for consequences is overwhelming. At least 7 in 10 people support giving the Privacy Commissioner significantly greater enforcement powers.
Nice.
And a critical component of that support is the demand for the ability to issue large fines for serious data breaches.
Hit them in the wallet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The public doesn't just want a regulatory slap on the wrist anymore. They want financial penalties severe enough to actually change corporate behavior. They want the cost of failing to protect data to be higher than the profit made from harvesting it in the first place.
Right. So, if we synthesize everything we've looked at today, the narrative is incredibly clear.
Hmm.
People are exhausted by the manual labor of digital self-defense. They're so tired of the pop-ups and the endless unreadable policies, but they are absolutely not apathetic.
Not at all.
They care deeply about their data, they are terrified of unregulated AI, and they are intensely protective of their kids. What they're demanding is a system where the default setting is protection.
Default protection, yes.
They want the government to act as a shield, equipped with large fines and strict enforcement powers, so the average person doesn't have to be a cybersecurity expert just to safely navigate the internet.
The public is essentially asking for a structural solution to a structural problem.
Yeah.
The burden of privacy has been placed entirely on the individual for way too long, and the individual has just collapsed under the weight of it. This demand for law reform is a demand to shift that burden back onto the organizations that profit from the data in the first place.
You know, this has been a deeply revealing look at where society stands in 2026. We started out by asking why you click accept all cookies, and we've ended up uncovering this massive societal fatigue driven by invisible algorithms, physical surveillance, and just a profound lack of institutional trust.
It goes up.
It does. But as we wrap up this deep dive, where does this leave us in the long run? Because the technology certainly isn't slowing down.
No, it's accelerating. And I want to leave you, the listener, with the final concept to consider as we move forward.
Okay.
We've established that the average person is suffering from crippling privacy fatigue today, right now. But as artificial intelligence becomes even more deeply embedded into everything from our vehicles to our healthcare to our financial systems, managing data will require even more vigilance.
Yeah.
So will true privacy simply become a luxury?
Oh, wow.
Will the future be divided between a wealthy, tech-literate minority who actually have the immense time and resources required to actively defend their data, and a vast majority who simply have to surrender their personal information as the unwritten cost of participating in modern life?
Man, that is a heavy question, but it's the exact question we have to face, because the next time that cookie banner pops up on your screen, you'll know it's not just a minor UX annoyance.
No, it's not.
It is a tiny, deliberate symptom of a much larger battle over who actually owns your digital identity. Keep asking questions, demand better from the services you use, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.